Today I'm building a high-end workstation that I'll be using to produce videos at Computex, a massive tech trade show in Taiwan that I attend every year. To simplify the task of hauling a desktop over 6,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean, this will also be the most portable PC with a discrete GPU that I've ever built. Housed within the highly praised and incredibly compact Velka 3 case, I'm excited to kick off this build, which I've affectionately named the Velka Pro. Before we continue, this video is brought to you in part by CDKeyOffer.com. So I have 3 desktop PCs that I regularly bounce between, and all of them are running activated copies of Windows from keys that I got on CDKeyOffer.com. I've used many key sites in the past, but CDKeyOffer is the only one I've never had an issue with. I've never had a bad key, I've never had to call customer service, I've never had to email customer support, and I've never had to activate Windows over a phone, which is super fun. Right now you can get a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for around $22, but wait! Add it to your cart, use the 25% discount code BW20 at checkout, and the price drops to just $16.93. Buy Grabthar's hammer, what a savings. To use your new key, just go to your purchased orders from the drop-down menu to view and copy the key once you get there, and then paste that key into the Windows activation page. Voila! You've got an activated OS that's also eligible for a free upgrade to Windows 11. Alternatively, you can skip the upgrade and buy Windows 11 Pro directly using the same code BW20 to snag the OS for around $23. Activate the key using the aforementioned steps and get the full Windows experience easily and affordably. Thanks again to CDKeyOffer.com. Now back to the main video. Now, when choosing the case for this system, it was very important for this build to be as compact and backpack friendly as possible. Call me paranoid, but I always make it a habit to toss my PC into a carry-on backpack when flying, so I can keep it safely by my side at all times. Anyone who trusts an airline with their valuables is a fool. Now, I could opt for a carry-on sized rolling suitcase to accommodate a larger build, but that would mean risking the airline gate-checking my bag on a crowded flight, a scenario I've narrowly escaped many times. So, a backpack-sized PC it is. With its stellar build quality, diminutive size, and by extension, its support for smaller and lighter components, the Velka 3 from Velcase is the perfect chassis for my needs. With merely a 4-liter volume, it makes other leading ITX cases like the A4H2O and NR200P look and feel like bricks by comparison once they're full of hardware. Unfortunately, the Velka 3's extreme portability also comes with some significant compromises, including limited options for CPU cooling, mandatory use of a Flex ATX PSU, and limited support for 2-slot ITX graphics cards less than 179mm long. Despite giving these caveats a great deal of consideration, in the end, I felt there were enough workarounds to still make the build a worthwhile endeavor. While I've chosen to go small for our case, we're going big on the CPU, in order to chew through all the 4K H.264 footage I'll be editing. Performance slowdowns are especially brutal at events when I'm dealing with a stack of time-sensitive uploads, so I'll need a processor capable of handling all my tasks seamlessly and simultaneously. As such, I've elected the AMD Ryzen 9 7950X3D to be our compute king, with 16 cores and 32 threads on Team Red's latest Zen 4 architecture. The chip sports some of the best multi-threaded performance outside of a high-end desktop SKU. I was briefly tempted by one of ASRock's EPIC-ready SFF boards, but upon realizing that its deep mini ITX form factor would require a case 3 to 4 times larger than the Velka 3, I quickly ditched the idea. Maybe we'll save that for a different build. And although Intel's Core i9-14900K spanks my Ryzen 9 at editing H.264 files thanks to a hefty boost from QuickSync, it's just too inefficient and too hot for this build, as confirmed by a number of folks on the SFF PC subreddit with more first-hand experience on the matter than me. The 7950X3D is still a great chip for video editing, and while not as fast as the 14900K for our use case, there's far less chance of it having a meltdown with the modest cooling solution we'll be using. Our mini ITX motherboard is the Asus ROG Strix B650EI Gaming Wi-Fi, featuring 10+2 power stages, support for PCIe Gen 5, and dual-channel DDR5 memory. Without a lick of front I/O ports on the Velka 3, the board's wealth of rear I/O, including 2 USB-C ports, one of which delivers 20 gigabits per second, is a welcome feature. For CPU cooling, I opted for the Noctua NH-L9A. The tried-and-true low-profile cooler is among the top performers that will fit inside the Velka 3, but its max TDP of 95 watts mean we'll need to undervolt the 7950X3D with its much larger 170 watt TDP to prevent thermal throttling. That begs the question I'm most curious about today. How much performance will be lost from such an undervolt, as that will heavily determine whether my decision to use this chip was worthwhile or a big waste of sand. We'll be utilizing the motherboard's maximum supported memory capacity with 96 gigs of G.Skill Flare X DDR5 5600. Yeah, this is definitely overkill, as 64 gigs would have been plenty for my 4K workflow, but when the bros at G.Skill offer you extra RAM so you don't have to download it yourself, you accept. Storage may not be the sexiest part of a build, but it's a critical component of this PC that shouldn't be overlooked. Hopefully 12 terabytes of NVMe storage should do the trick. We'll be booting off Corsair's 4TB MP700 Pro with PCIe 5 speeds that boast sequential reads and writes of roughly 12,000 megabytes a second. That'll run alongside their 8TB MP600 Pro LPX, a Gen 4 drive well suited for the motherboard's Gen 4 M.2 slot on the back. If my calculations serve me right, this should be enough storage for Computex 2024 through 2045. Now, the Velka 3 can be a tricky case to go PSU shopping for due to its exclusive Flex ATX compatibility and unique form factor. Fortunately, Velcase actually sells a 600-watt Flex ATX unit that fits their case like a glove. The power supply is a semi-custom version of the ENP7660B from Enhanced Electronics that features 92% efficiency at 50% load and shortened cables for easier cable management. As an added bonus, owners of the PSU claim the fan is pretty darn quiet. Our graphics card is the Palit RTX 4060 Ti Storm X 8GB, and it's arguably the smallest elephant in the room. To say the RTX 4060 Ti was a disappointment goes beyond beating a dead horse. We're beating off a dead horse at this point. But given the limitations and needs of our build, this is actually the best option available. Currently, there's no faster 40 series card that fits inside the Velka 3 without serious modifications. One exception is the 16GB 4060 Ti, but ITX variants are extremely scarce, and the ones available went to the tune of $600 and beyond last I checked. With the dearth of ITX models from AMD, the only feasible alternative would be the RTX 3060 Ti. In fact, the fine team at Puget Systems found the 3060 Ti to outperform the 4060 Ti by about 18% in GPU effects for Adobe Premiere Pro. But when it came to H.264 decoding, the 4060 Ti scored 12% higher than its predecessor. Although it's a smaller victory, H.264 accelerated tasks like playback, scrubbing, and reverse playback are significantly more relevant to my personal workflow than GPU effects like transitions and motion scaling. This was a selling point that ultimately sealed my decision. I'd also be lying if I said that the thought of having DLSS 3 doesn't come to mind in case I have any downtime in the hotel room. At just 17 centimeters long, Palit's 4060 Ti Storm X fits the Velka 3 comfortably and seems to be a great choice for sub 5-liter builds like this one. The RTX 4060 Ti may not be the hero I deserve, but in this case, it's the hero I need. The last piece to the puzzle is a PCIe Gen 4 riser cable I purchased on Amazon that works as intended. Velcase sells one of their own with thin wires for easier installation that I would have picked up if it wasn't blue and ugly and looked like a homeless jockstrap. For being a 4-liter case, this was a surprisingly easy build. The Velka 3 has you do most of the assembly outside of the case, which certainly helps, along with those shortened cables from their power supply, which I highly recommend for this case. Although it's still a really tight fit, the case's incredible build quality keeps the steel panels from any bulging whatsoever, which is super impressive. The end result makes for a tiny, blacked out PC that looks adorably badass. But since its merit can't be judged on looks alone, I ran some tests to see whether the Velka Pro is a worthy mobile workstation. With our fully stocked system, an initial run in Cinebench churned out a lofty multi-threaded score of 33,880 and a single-thread score of 1,845. Unfortunately, the 7950X 3D drew nearly 140 watts and hit just south of 90 degrees Celsius. And while no thermal throttling was reported, the load temperatures left something to be desired. I quickly took to the BIOS and undervolted our CPU by configuring the curve optimizer with an all-core negative offset of 20, the largest value I could reach while maintaining system stability. With Precision Boost Overdrive, I also set a PPT limit of 80 watts to tame power usage and hopefully drive down temperatures. In that same Cinebench run, this dropped power consumption close to the desired 80 watts with a max load temp of 68°C, a whopping 22 degrees lower than stock. I was pleased to see the new single-thread score slightly outpace stock performance, but seeing the multi-thread score suffer a 17% decrease versus stock had me eager to reconfigure our undervolt settings for better results. However, before jumping back into the BIOS, I decided to conduct a render test that took me by surprise. In Adobe Media Encoder, the system exported a 10-minute 4K video file a few seconds faster than it did its stock, and did so with a max temp that was 10 degrees cooler. I can't fully explain the disparity between the Cinebench and render test results, but since I'll be using this system to render videos and not run Cinebench cycles all day, I'm keeping the undervolt settings as is. The system crushes 4K video editing as well, with stutter-free playback even at 16x speed, partly thanks to our Gen 5 SSD. As an editing rig, the Velka Pro is currently outperforming every full-size desktop I own, with the exception of Prometheus, who be on his Threadripper bullshit. How is this possible? I don't really know, but it's pretty amazing what super small form factor systems are capable of these days. And since curiosity got the best of me, I fired up Cyberpunk 2077 at 2560 by 1440 to see how the Velka Pro games. Trying to run the low ray tracing preset proved to be a choppy mess, but enabling frame generation and setting DLSS to quality delivered 70 to 90 frames per second on average for a smooth and visually arousing experience. At 1920 by 1080, you can nearly max out the game with the ultra ray tracing preset and achieve 80 to 100 FPS with the same DLSS settings. I don't intend to use the Velka Pro for much gaming because it is a workstation PC, but the fact that it can game this well gets me kinda bricked up. Suffice to say, this little PC has far exceeded all of my expectations, from performance to aesthetics to portability, and now it's finally ready to do lots of good work for me at Computex 2024. So stay tuned for my coverage there, and thank you so much for watching this video. Before you go, guys, please toss a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Get subscribed for more tech content coming at you really soon. Click the notification bell so you don't miss any new uploads, and I will see y'all in the next video.